evening, everyone. It has turned 6 o'clock by my watch, so if we could make a start to the meeting. Item 1, apologies for absence. I have apologies from Councillor MacDonald. I believe everyone else is present. Item 2, the meeting minutes of the previous meeting. Can we agree those? Agreed. Thank you. Item 3, to confirm or vary the order of business. I confirm that there are members of the public within the gallery who have an interest in item 10, proposed acquisition of waterfront sites in St Peter's Dock. So I propose that we move that consideration of that item after item 5. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Item 4, are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Cheney.
Thank you, Chair. I have a peculiar interest in item 9, being my husband's business, and I will be leaving the room at the start of the day.
Thank you. Are there any further declarations of interest? No? Okay. If we could then move on to item 5, Ipswich Garden Suburb Interim Adoption of Draft Supplementary Planning Guidance. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very pleased to bring this document to Executive. I will be brief because it comes here today and it is recommended to go to full council at the next meeting, where there will be the opportunity for more extensive discussion and debate. So we have here the Ipswich Garden Suburb Supplementary Planning Document. It has two sources. It was part of the previous administration's local plan, and it would be sensible anyway, but its crucial necessity came out of the Mersey Homes application in 2010, where they applied to build houses on this land. They were refused by the council. They took it to appeal, and that appeal was dismissed because we argued that any application that came for the Northern Fringe had to be part of a whole-scale development, could not be piecemeal. And therefore what we have here is a coordinated master plan for the whole site. And of course it's a very large site. It's been a challenging and complex project, but absolutely essential, not only because of what I've already described, but because of the size of the site and the extent of the proposed development, which is around 3,500 houses, the time scale, which can be over 20 years, and perhaps the most challenging, the fact that it is in multiple ownership. Section 2 of the report gives the history of creating this master plan, and 2.6 is perhaps of particular interest because it itemises the various groups, stakeholders and partners involved in helping the council bring this to fruition, and it is an extensive list. I also note under section 3, Chair, that it is compliant with our own planning policies and also with the government's national planning policy framework as itemised in 3.2. That supplementary planning documents should be used where they can help applicants make successful applications, and this clearly does that. And in another part of that framework, it requires us, encourages planning authorities to make every effort to boost housing in a significant way, which we are doing here. Section 5 covers the lengthy and extensive consultations that we have had. In fact, from the beginning of the process, and we have under in Appendix 12 details of submissions to the draft plan and the Council's response to all of those. They were numerous and have been treated with due seriousness and consideration by our officers. In section 12, I think this is our report, we have listed on page 39 the changes that we've made as a result of that consultation. So we consulted, considered, and then where we felt it was justified, made changes. The two key changes which are referred to here are little I, the location and the timing of delivery of the secondary school after discussion with, among others, Suffolk County Council, the Education Authority, and amendments to the infrastructure table in little y on page 51. I would like to, at this point, thank officers for their hard work, their professionalism, their commitment and their patience in dealing with all of this. Phil Sweet was the officer who began this process, and we have with us today Rosalind Claxton, who is completing this process and taking it forward for us. They have been, I think, exemplary in what they've done, and I would like that noted. The other thing I'd like to deal with before I turn to the recommendations is to look at Appendix 18. This is the note from Atlas. Atlas is the advisory team for large applications. It's a government team from the Housing and Communities Agency. And it worked with us for the whole of the process, and then at the end it assessed, it reviewed what the council had done and how we had carried out this difficult and lengthy task. And in all the areas which it looked at, vision and objectives, project management and transparency, community and stakeholder engagement, and infrastructure viability and delivery issues, in all of those, it commends the council for the manner in which they were carried out. And I think in a way it's like, you know, a good report at the end of the school year, possibly. I think that gives us confidence that we have done this job very well. It won't please everybody, obviously, Chair, and that's the nature of the beast, isn't it? It's too large and too diverse in all the things that it covers. If I may now turn to the recommendations, it is essentially that we commit ourselves to the Northern Fringe as a key and substantial site for housing within the Ipswich boundary, and we recommend full council to approve this SPD as interim planning guidance. Interim because we are also in the process of reviewing our core strategy, and before we can adopt this fully, we must have adopted that, because this document sits beneath our core strategy. And with that, Chair, I will end. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Do officers wish to add anything at this point? No, thank you. We have had a question from the MP, Mr. Gummer. I'd like to invite Mr. Gummer to step forward and make his question.
Mr. Chairman, first of all, my thanks to you for allowing me to make a question and also late notice, and I appreciate you being gracious in accepting that request. And this is probably the largest undertaking that the borough has made since the 1960s, and I appreciate the amount of work that's gone in. I hope you will permit me just an extended preface to my question, which is a substantive one. I want to say first of all that I do mean this sincerely, I commend the borough in dealing with what is potentially a very difficult political decision in order to progress with this. You have done so with some speed, and I think that is to be commended also because you are showing a willingness to build houses, which is always unpopular. And I appreciate the fact that you have had the courage to do that. And I also think that we have the makings here of something which could be a real enhancement to the town. I do have a number of concerns, and the substance of my question is really about the process by which you take this forward. I think that Councillor Jones, in her introduction, shows the level of aspiration the borough and everyone in the town has for any possible new development of this size. But I'm not entirely convinced yet the document which has been drawn up by the advisors to the developers and therefore to the borough is of the sufficient quality which I know that the borough aspires to achieve. And if I may just give you a few examples of that, where I think that improvements might be possible just with a bit more time. I'm not asking for months, but maybe just weeks, in order to improve the offer. And if I can just demonstrate a few issues. If you were to look on page 8, I don't know if everyone has got the document in front of them, they'll see there a map of the northern fringe split into 3 areas, and its relationship with the rest of the town. And that really is the only area in anything other than the appendix which shows the relationship of the northern fringe with the rest of the town. Now, what urban planners will call the urban morphology of the town and how people move around the town is critical to understanding how the northern fringe will succeed. And the northern fringe is really our one shot at getting the town centre to work, and the connections between the two are essential. But you won't find in this document a detailed explanation of how people move, and also a pictorial explanation of how people move between the new northern fringe, 3,500 new houses, and the town centre. A route which is very direct, and which, of all provincial towns in Britain, is probably one of the best sites in terms of proximity to the town centre that you could have on offer. Understanding those connections, I think, would help develop some of the sustainability matters, which I know the borough feels very deeply about, and has done right since the beginning of this administration. I think there's a real opportunity here for really good cycle links between the northern fringe and the town centre, something I know that Councillor Jones is personally keen on, of the kind which has been pioneered in London and now increasingly in Bristol and elsewhere. But we don't have a description of that, and that makes it harder to try and negotiate the Section 106 agreements which you correctly have beefed up in your changed recommendations, which I read today. So something around that would help. You will also notice that there is nowhere in this document a topology of the site, by which I mean the way the land falls. And that might seem like a rather kind of anal observation, but it does have consequences. If you look on page 80 of the document, which is the main plan, as it were, of the outlay of the whole site, you'll see there, just above the railway line in the top left-hand corner, a green space, which is ovoid in shape. Now that, according to the plan by David Locke Associates, is a cricket pitch. But if you place a topography above that, you'll see the cricket pitch actually lies on a slope. Now that is a mistake that would not have been made had this plan been made with a profound and deep understanding of the fall of the land. And it goes some way to suggest, I think, about the degree of work. It's not huge, but there is just more work to be done to ensure that this really does work as a master plan. And I'll give you another example of how I think this plan could be confusing to residents. Because if you look at that plan again that I've signalled on page 80, you'll see a number of blue areas up on the top, running down what is a drainage system to the railway line. A visualisation which is actually made right at the beginning of the document, just before Part A, on page 18. And this is a view from the north, from the Westfield to Henley Road, looking down back towards Ipswich. Now, if you were a resident, you would look at those blue areas, and you would imagine that you would have a lake next door to your new houses, or in fact existing houses along the Hay Road. But those, Mr. Chairman, are not actually lakes at all. They are 1 in 30-year flood events. Those areas are swales and suds. They will not be filled with water all the time. In fact, the one on the right will be filled very rarely. And that goes to the heart of the problem that I have with some of this document, which is that it has the right aspirations, it speaks to the garden suburb and the kind of quality of life that it is going to give to everyone on site, and of the improvements it will give to Ipswich. But I'm not quite sure that the image is backed up by the detail within the document. Why is that a problem? Because as you will have seen from the Planning Commission, I know that you're not able to comment on this, that's been submitted by Mersey Homes in anticipation of this document being completed, it doesn't really, in my mind, measure up to the quality that this document wants. And the reason for that is because this document is not yet asking enough. Now, if you were to go to talk to Cambridge City Council, an administration, I should point out, not run by the Executive
we are
Department.
showing remarkable forbearance.
You are.
It is supposed to be a question. If you
And
could
I'm very-
perhaps get to the question.
And I'm very new there. If you were to ask Cambridge City Council, the way that they've got their recent developments of mixed housing to work is by really rigorous design standards. So my question really is this. I really do commend you for what you have done, and I want to be able to support it. I think many people do, and you're lucky to have a series of residents around who are broadly understanding of what you want to achieve. But my question is whether you will be able to delay this, at least just by a few weeks, to try and address the issues which I and residents have raised, so that you can put a plan to full council which could have the backing of all parties in what should be a cross-party support for the biggest extension of Ipswich since the 1960s and the biggest investment in the town that anyone is likely to be made in our lifetimes as politicians. Thank you for your forbearance.
In summary, can we delay it? Yes?
Well,
Sorry, I've
no.
opened a whole can of worms.
That's not a feint to say, can we delay it by 6 months or a year just for it not to happen? As I said, I want to support a plan that builds new houses. Can we delay putting it to the council till we've got a full council, till we've got a master plan that I think addresses those issues and which can then get the support of everyone?
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I do welcome Mr. Gummer's comments in many ways. His support for our commitment to build houses and our aspiration for the scheme and for the town, and his acknowledgement that we've made changes to the master plan and we've produced really what is, I think, despite your comments, quite a very high quality document, and I think perhaps that's indicated by the fact that there are only perhaps 3 points that Mr. Gummer has raised. I am not in favour myself of delaying this document. It's necessary because we have an application in place at the moment, Mr. Gummer has mentioned, and the adoption of this SPD would enable us to consider that application in the light of the requirements, which are very robust, laid down in this. So I think it's important that we've got it, because we've got a planning application for over 800 homes coming to us on part of the site. I hear the point he makes about Cambridge, but one of the things that we did when we were, we made lots of visits when we were drawing up the documents, looking for examples of good and bad practice as we could assess it. And one of the things, we went to Harlow to see the Sterling Prize nominated part of the new hall development, for example. And we went and had a look at the Accordia development in Cambridge, which was excellent. But we also looked at Trumpington Meadows, which was dire. So, you know, I think there are variations in the quality of probably development in every part of the country. And I think what we are really trying to do is to get the best that we can for Ipswich. I will ask Ms Claxton to note, you know, the comments that you've made about changes. I'm not quite sure if we can get them ready for the council meeting, but if they're minor, we can. But I think I need to make two more points, and then I'll stop chatting. One is that, as people say, I think, you know, it's a living document. This is not now set in stone forever and a day. It is something which we can modify, and in fact, we will need to modify as conditions change over economic conditions and housing demand changes over the next 20 years. And so it is possible for us to make changes. And that, secondly, when applicants make applications to build on this site, it's not all in here. This is, in a way, the instructions, the ingredients, but we will have to have detailed other documents. For example, the infrastructure delivery plan, which is listed here with suggested phasing. We have to have detailed transport assessments predicated on up-to-date evidence at that time. So if it's in 5 years' time, then it's not going to be the same as it is now. And so that's got to be up-to-date and detailed and robust. We have to have environmental impact assessments, ecology surveys, air quality assessments pertinent to conditions at the time. And if you look at Section 10, for example, that lists the requirements, including a robust requirement for good design. We're actually one of the few local authorities, that has a drainage engineer of real substance respected across Suffolk. We also have an urban design officer, and that's quite a rarity, whom I disagree with quite often, but is, you know, a really very talented, astute professional. And he is there to ensure that when the applications come in, they are of a quality that before they get, you know, a recommendation for approval, we are really, really satisfied with them. So I don't know whether we can make small modifications to this. Certainly in the longer term and into the future, there will be changes we can make, because that is what the document is for. But also, applications coming in will need to be robust and provide documentation, as I've explained, in numerous very important areas. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do officers wish to add anything at this point? Are there any questions? Councillor Chinch.
It's sort of a question. Totally separately from our MP, I also had that I was concerned about the council meeting on the 17th. One, because we hadn't had one since 6 months or so, so I expect it to be quite full, and I feel like Ben Gummer that this is so important, requires cross-party cooperation, and I feel that at the council meeting the residents and anybody else that wants to come along should have enough time. We should have enough time for all the councillors to have their say and ask questions. And I was actually going to ask if there was any possibility of there being a separate council meeting, or at least delaying it until the time after. And that was totally separate from our MP. I don't think Ben Gummer had enough time to list all the things, Councillor Jones, so I don't, through you, Chair, I don't think that it's just a question of making a few changes. There are some fundamental things that we, as the Conservative group, are not happy about. We don't think that it's complete. We don't think that all the residents' concerns have been answered fully. Some of them have even had the repeat of a sentence saying that this will be dealt with at a later stage. I don't think it's a proactive document. I think it's more a waiting, it's a reactive document. And for instance, in section 12, which I think Councillor Jones has already pointed out, there's a sentence there that says, right at the end, and the overall master plan is accorded with in order to deliver a well-planned, well-designed, sustainable garden. And of course the high quality, which is a attitude. What does it mean? What are we saying to potential development applications? Where does it really outline our aspirations? The survey that then Gunnar did with the residents that came back resounding that they didn't want the same as other developments. They wanted an award-winning development, and I don't feel that this shows enough aspiration to say that that's the only thing that we're going to accept here. I just feel that why should we rush this? It's so important. My group is totally united on this. Going for the recommendations, if we do it on bulk, I probably will have to say I don't agree because of 13.2. We think major amendments are needed, not minor amendments. So perhaps we could work together, delay the council meeting and come up with those amendments. Obviously the others we're reasonably happy with. So I'm backing up what our MP has said and would like that extra time. I'm particularly concerned about the council meeting, and I know the councillors in my group are looking forward to being able to ask questions and have their say. So I'm asking the same question, I suppose. I'm sorry if that's a bit of a duplication, but I'm backing up that request.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. May I point out that we've been working on this for 2 years. There has been ample opportunity for every councillor from any party to say exactly what they want, to make suggestions to us, and in fact we've had a community steering panel from the beginning on which senior Conservative councillors and Liberal Democrat councillors have sat. Councillors Terry and Chris Stewart were members of that panel the whole time, Chair, and there was absolute time for them to say what they wanted, to input what they wanted, and I would have listened to it happily because this was a collaborative process with developers, landowners, the community, councillors, Suffolk County Council and everybody from English Heritage to the Ipswich Society. We worked collaboratively. So I think there has been ample opportunity, and now, at the point where we come to adopt this as an interim SPD, is not the time to say, oh, we haven't had time, and we've had actually 2 years. And if we go back to the Atlas assessment of how we have run this, I think they are most complementary on community and stakeholder engagement, where they comment that the nature, format and timing of community and stakeholder engagement for preparation of this SPD is to be commended. The extensive, well-planned community engagement events at key stages, complemented by a regular engagement with a community liaison panel, provided a comprehensive opportunity for the community and key stakeholders, that is opposition councillors and councillors in the wards surrounding the Northern Fringe, I would suggest, to input to the preparation of the draft SPD, which has clearly shaped the final draft version. And I think that says it all, Chair.
Yes, I would like to respond to that. First of all, I think they did show their concerns, especially along the infrastructure. And what we got back was that Suffolk County Council. Well, I think we should liaise with Suffolk County Council. They should really look at their figures. We should look at some sort of northern road to help alleviate it. We have brought up concerns before. This is the first time I've been on executive. with where this paper has come forward with the residents' comments, and I don't want to go through them tonight because it's going to full council, but I've made lots of notes where I feel as if they have not been treated with due regard with some of their comments. And so therefore, one has to wait for the consultations to come back from various parties before you can comment on it. I'm now the person, Councillor Terry's not even a councillor anymore. I'm here representing my group, of which we are united, and we do want to work collaboratively. I can't say the word, you know what I'm trying to say. And therefore, we're asking that we are able to do that in a timely fashion, because there are many years going forward where we're going to be judged on this. Many, many years. What is a few weeks? That's all.
Thank you, Chairman. I think that with a bit of goodwill on the sides, we could probably make the next council meeting work. It rather depends on how many questions people want to ask on other matters, and whether that sort of business could be held over to a later meeting. Because I totally agree with the point that the main topic for discussion should be this. I think all of us share a desire, an aspiration, if you like, that what should come out of this over the next couple of decades is a development which has a sufficient quality that would win awards. We had, of course, awards for the development at Ravenswood, but there are some differences. In the case of Ravenswood, the council had a development partner and owned the land. So we controlled the value of that land. We could allow certain improvements to be charged, if you like, to value, such as land for new schools, putting in bus routes and this kind of stuff, and cycle-friendly roads and so on. All of these are things which developers argue cost money. The problem we have here is we do not own the land, and there is a multiplicity of developers, all of whom, should I say, want obviously to maximise the return that they get out of this. And I think it was interesting that the example was chosen of Cambridge. It is much easier in authorities that are, I suppose, from a planning sense, lucky enough, but in other senses perhaps less lucky, where house prices are so high that the value obtained from that development is able to afford many more improvements than might otherwise be the case in areas that don't enjoy that kind of, if you like, overheated housing market. Now, what I can assure people in terms of the connectivity, I was wondering how long it would take before people mentioned northern bypasses and the like. I mean, there is dialogue between the borough and the county on the issue of transport. I was at a meeting with the county only last night, one of the series of meetings where we're working together to examine the robustness of the transport offering and what will be the test of how good these applications are will be the willingness of the developers to work together with delivering this infrastructure delivery plan, because that's the thing that's going to make it work, and they do have to cooperate with one another in order to make that happen. In terms of delaying it, we are, of course, unlike the situation in Ravenswood, where we were able to control when the planning application went in. We have a developer that has put in a planning application against which we have to judge it by the use of by the instrument of the plan that we need to take to full council. So it is, in a sense, the pressure from the marketplace, if you like, we get the interest in the private sector, that is to some extent dictating or influencing the speed at which we have to get this plan in place. So I think there are certain risks attached to delaying this. This development, just to be clear, and one thing that we do agree with the county on, isn't going to have sufficient value in it to fund, for example, an invite ups that many people will want to see. I mean, I don't know what the cost of one of these things is, but I mean, supposing it's about 140 million, then you're either going to have to charge about £40,000 per house, which I expect would be unacceptable to the developers, or you perhaps charge £1,000 per house and have 140,000 of them, in which case Ipswich becomes a kind of southern fringe to a Westerfield new town the size of something like Leicester, which I'm sure none of us want. So this is the problem we have, and of course any perceived need for walking bypass has come around because there's been developments in Kesgrave and Martlesham and places like this that are long since built. So we are, I think, where we are with this, we are working with the county to make sure that we get the infrastructure right and that the delivery plan will be robust enough. And that really is all the assurance I can give from the transport perspective. I obviously have a wish that it was always going to be as easy as Ravenswood, but we are, again, where we are with the multiplicity of land ownerships.
If I could just comment briefly on 4 different aspects. Councillor Jones has already effectively given a commitment that we will look to summarise Mr Gunner's comments within the next council paper and consider whether it would be sensible, appropriate, or whatever other word I should use to make some further changes as a consequence of that. The council meeting, as I understand it from memory, is on the 17th of September as scheduled, which is 4-ish weeks away. Whilst clearly it is not in my control or influence as to what questions or motions there might be, from memory there are not any vastly substantive items of business other than this one scheduled for that meeting that normally take a considerable length of councillor time. I think there is the close of accounts year-end and the Treasury Management Annual Report, which, whilst being important, tends not traditionally to be that time-consuming in terms of the amount of time they are debated. And I think one thing that, certainly from an officer perspective, is important, Councillor Smart touched on it within his comments, is effectively we're dealing with 3 processes in parallel, and in a way processes that don't work particularly brilliantly in parallel, that being the planning application we currently have, which has a set timetable associated with that, with the potential for an appeal for non-determination before the end of the year. We've got this process associated with the SPD, and alongside that, as Councillor Jones referred to earlier, we've got the core strategy process. So in a different world, things might be different, but we have those 3 things working in parallel. And then fourthly, ultimately it is for councillors at full council to take a view as to whether the supplementary planning document is of sufficient quality and sufficient everything else to be adopted, and it's our role effectively to ensure you have the requisite information in front of you to be able to make that judgment, be that on the 17th of September or a different date.
No, I think that's
Thank you. I think it is important to recognise where we got to with the SPD. It does follow on from the original Mersey Homes application, and the only reason that was turned down was because of the possibility, or in fact the commitment, that we were going to have a master plan for the site. I don't think any of us would want the government on the Northern Fringe to go ahead without a master plan guiding it, and we've already seen that disagreements between developers about which aspect of development should pay for which aspect of infrastructure. Until we get this in place, that is going to cause us a problem. From my own personal point of view, I think it would have been an awful lot better if we did not have this planning application submitted until we actually got the SPD agreed. But we are not able to determine the timing of private developers. and therefore we have got to consider the fact that this application is live, and therefore we do need to have an SPD against which to judge it, and I think we do need to be aware of that. As Mr Williams has said, we've got a commitment to include the MP's comments in the report to Council. If there are any further questions or comments that councillors from any parties have got that can be fed into that process prior to the Council meeting, please do so, and we will ensure that those are taken into account. But given the live application, then time is of the essence. Otherwise, we do face the very real possibility that we will end up with the piecemeal development that none of us wanted. Given the...
Sorry, Chair.
Councillor Chinchey.
Thank you. I was going to ask that question and you've answered it. Thank you very much. Because I feel that it should just be the comments that have been made. That was a rushed thing and there wasn't enough time now. So thank you for that. Is there a timescale by which we would have to submit anything that we might want considered?
As soon as possible.
Could I ask one
Yeah, I would say something like the beginning of next week. You know, this is, I don't know whether Ms Claxton wants to respond to that, but ASAP means
This week?
weeks. Yeah, this week, beginning of next week.
Given the timetable for the publication of the council report, if we are going to include them, I mean, we are up against timescale here, so the sooner we can get those in, the better. It is possible that there may be comments which we haven't been able to address at the time of the publication of the council agenda, but obviously if comments got in a timely manner and we are able to address them in the body of the report, then we will do so. Okay. Given what's been said about, there seems to be there are certain aspects of the recommendations that I think do have agreement. What I will do is, the 5 recommendations, I will take the vote individually on all 5 recommendations. So, recommendation 13.1, can I have those in favour? So that is unanimous. Item 13.2, can I have those in favour? Against?
Reported, please.
Item 13.3, can I have those in favour? Those against? No, that's unanimous. Recommendations 13.4, those in favour? Unanimous. And recommendation 13.5, those in favour?
Chair, could I just clarify before you move on to 13.5 that the comments that you talked about being considered at council will be in a report and not actually in the SPD. The only SPD is the wording of this recommendation that needs to change.
That's within the report. Okay. Are you happy? Okay, thanks. Okay, if we can then move on to item 10, proposed acquisition of waterfront sites and St Peter's Dock. I'll just allow Thank you. There have been some very welcome signs of movement on the waterfront. Councillors will be well aware that when the credit crunch came in 2008, development stalled. The most visible sign of that being the so-called wine rack, and you would have seen in the press that it looks like we are going to get some movement and some development on that, which is very welcome. But there are a number of sites on the waterfront which we believe are unlikely to be developed anytime soon, and this is particularly unfortunate because they are, I think, what everybody would regard as the entrance to the waterfront at Stoke Bridge. If I could draw your attention to Appendix 1, in actual fact there are 4 sites that that we're talking about, but only 3 are the subject of this report. The site nearest Stoke Bridge, which is currently used as a car park, the so-called Investec site, which is the current silo, and the roadway. Those are the 3 sites that we're talking about today. There is a 4th site, which is the Burton's building, which is also in derelict state, which is in the hands of the Treasury Solicitor, and we are attempting to release that in a separate process. Our assessment of these sites is that given the current state of the market, they are unlikely to be developable any time soon. That relates to the Beeson and the Investec site, and the reason why that relates to further relationship to the road is that the roadway is under a multiplicity of ownerships. Indeed, we believe there are some parts of it where nobody is admitting ownership of it, and it is clear that nothing will happen to the roadway, which you will be aware is full of potholes, puddles, still a bit of disused railway track and so on. Nothing will happen to that unless there is development on the other 2 sites. So we believe that the 3 need to be tackled together. Our view is that the council needs to be involved in this, in bringing the development of this forward, because as I've said, the state of the market means that it's unlikely to happen anytime soon. That is we need to do that for a number of reasons. One is so that we can actually get the entrance to the waterfront sorted out and developed, including the roadway. Secondly, we know that there is a shortage of housing and housing developments in the town, and we've just heard in the previous item about some of the difficulties about bringing forward new housing sites. These sites have been allocated for housing, and therefore that would help with our deliverability targets. And also, I think it is very important that we do get a stunning entrance to the waterfront, something that will draw people in, but also ensure that we can have the correct links into the town centre through St Peter's Street and St Nicholas Street. And therefore, it is important that we have that we are able to guide the public space at the entrance to the waterfront, which this would enable us to do. So what we're proposing to do is to negotiate with the owners of the 2 sites to hopefully we can get an agreement on the sale of those two sites. But I think we do have to be aware, given what those 2 sites are currently on the market for, and what our assessment of what their likely value is, that those negotiations may not be successful, and therefore I think it is entirely proper that we set out right at the outset that if those negotiations are not successful, then we should be prepared to go down the compulsory purchase route. This report does not give authorisation to go ahead with compulsory purchase, but it does flag up the prospect. In paragraph 211 on page 299, it does give an indicative timescale about how this could proceed, and it will be clear to everyone that this is not going to be a quick process, even with the involvement of the council. But I think it is important that we kick this off and get this going. One of the first things that members of the public will see as a result of agreeing this report is that we will launch the design competition for the site, where there will be extensive public consultation, so that there will be some reassurance that something is going to happen. Personally, I think it is very important that we get the public space right, and also what happens on the ground floor, be it a visitor centre, a high quality restaurant or so on. It is important that we get that absolutely right, so that we've got an entrance to the waterfront that we can all be proud of. I don't wish to add anything further at this point. Do you wish to add anything, Mr. Williams? No. Are there any questions? Councillor Chenji.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we totally support this. It's excellent and look forward to it changing the waterfront. My question actually probably will interest our visitors that we have here as well, totally separately. The fact that the waterfront plan to have 100% private tenure, and yet on Ravenswood it's going to be completely council homes, rather than kept around, which I think is what the residents there would prefer to see, and probably I would prefer to see actually. So if someone could answer why on this particular occasion we are stating it's 100%.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, do you wish to draw attention to Appendix 3?
Thank you, Chair. I will draw attention to Appendix 3. In that regard, I think we've done the work that would suggest, using a standard development appraisal, that this is very marginal at best. At this point in time, our conclusion is that the site would not be viable to have any affordable housing within it. As and when it gets to a planning application stage, then that will be tested to one degree or another, as with any other application that is made. But we don't believe the economics stack up in viability terms here to lead to a likelihood that affordable housing could be required within the planning.
Is that because it's set in?
That's because of all the costs that are set out in Appendix 3, which would be quite high for the development on this site, but clearly it is something that will need to be kept under review throughout the development process.
Well, obviously there are some key aspects of this. One being that there is a huge concrete silo which needs to be demolished, which that's not cheap.
Yep.
And also, of course, this is the site of the original Ipswich settlement. There will be undoubtedly a huge amount of archaeology under this site. If it hasn't been destroyed by previous development, and I think the archaeological cost would be far and above what we'd expect on other sites in the town. And I think those are things, as well as the state of the market, that means that it's unlikely to be viable with affordable housing. But as Councillor Chenchi will be well aware, this administration is trying to maximise the amount of affordable housing that we can provide in the town. And as Mr. Williams said, if it turns out as we go through this process that we believe we can get some affordable housing as a result of this development, then obviously we will try to maximise that. But currently, we think that the viability is marginal at best, without the provision of any affordable housing at all. Are there any other comments or questions? Agree with recommendations?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Okay, if we can then go back to item 6, asbestos surveys in housing stock. Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Chair. Straightforward report, I believe, but the crux of all this and the recommendation is to bring forward over a 6-month period from the end of the present contract, which goes up to the end of September. So 6 months from then, we can have all of our houses within the housing revenue account inspected under the asbestos surveys. The funding is in place. It will mean that it will come forward from one year to another, but there is money in the budget at the moment, so that's catered for that. I would just like to say that this inspection, the surveys, are to find out where any asbestos is and to monitor that and keep it and record it so that whenever we do any kind of improvements or work to the properties, we are completely aware of where there could be possible incidents of asbestos. Should it be necessary to make some improvements to remove asbestos, etc., that will be done at the time, and there's a separate budget for that, and that is also provided for. Thank you.
you wish to add anything?
No, thank you, Chair.
Any questions or comments on the report? No? Can we read recommendations? Thank you. Then move on to item 7, travel plan review. Councillor Smart.
Yes, thank you, Chair. With a certain symmetry in this report, paras 5.2 and 2.5 both refer to the progress that's being made in reducing the amount of single occupancy travel or car travel to work at Bishop Borough Council. It's gradually come down from 50%. The target of 35% is almost there. We're at 38% at the moment. First travel plan was in 2006. They tend to get reviewed every 4 years or so this is the 2014 review. The new things that we have introduced, or the changes if you like, there is an increase in the amount of discount that is available for rail season tickets. This is in line with that which is available at other authorities. And I think perhaps the most important thing is that there's going to be, as is mentioned in the report, a kind of ramping up of the marketing effort. Obviously, there's over time changes in staff and so on to try and increase the take-up of the offer that we have. One of the issues that we're not able to address at the moment, the car parks upon which employees are entitled to park. I've still up at Portland Road. This is a legacy, of course, of the old days when that was the car park closest to the old building. With the existing ticketing technology as it is, we're not able to install that kind of equipment in any car parks close to, so unable to free up any spaces as it goes down centre perhaps, but perhaps that can be looked at some point in the future. This has been the subject of consultation with the staff and trade unions who are happy with this, and that's all I've got to say. I don't know whether Catherine Pitcher has got anything to add.
Do you show anything to Any questions or comments? Councillor Chenchi?
Just to clarify, sixth question, are any of the staff having to pay an increase in car parks because of SSH? It sort of said they didn't, but then it didn't really make it clear, so sorry if it is in there, but...
Well, it says in 4.7 that parking charges were reviewed following the implementation of SSH.
Yeah.
I assume that the car parking charges that apply for what band you're in, and obviously some people move their bands as the SSH was implemented. So it wouldn't be the tariff necessarily changed, but where individuals sat within that and what tariff they qualified for would as a result of where they moved in the pay scale terms for the SSH.
Mrs. Punt?
Thank you, Chair. If memory serves, there was an executive decision made in March of this year to review those charges because of the implementation of service status. And again, if memory serves, the vast majority of people was paying the same or less.
Okay, great.
But I couldn't give you that numbers.
Okay.
That was my reflections. Well, perhaps if we could send Councillor Chenchi a copy of that report. Are there any other questions or comments? No? Can we read recommendations? Thank you very much. We then move on to item 8, provision of event security services. Councillor Watkins.
Thank you. I hope this is fairly straightforward. It's a very specific kind of security service that we're looking for around events. You'll see some of the detail in that, for example, at 1.5, and the difference with the security that we use in buildings like this, for example, at 1.6. So I'm happy to take any questions. So there'll be a paper in the session about who's possible.
Thank you. Do officers wish to add anything at this point? No, and we confirm that as part of the council's policy, the staff will be paid at least a living wage. Councillor Chinchey.
It's nice not to do with those papers. I have a couple of questions. They were actually given to me by the shadow holder. And he asked, in 1.1 and 1.3, it refers to the need to secure improvements to qualify, to raise the quality of the service. How is it hoped exactly that the current local provider can be improved upon? And in 11.1 and 1.3, the current contract is for 5 years, but supply A is given 1 year. What is the reason for this? Is it a resource need, as indicated with the risk table, where there is a factor 4 on the provider cannot meet the resource needs of the council? So is that the reason that we're keeping it to 1 year rather than 5 years, or is there another reason? And also how they're going to improve on their quality of service.
To answer your first question with regard to the current securing improvements, the current arrangement isn't a formal arrangement. In January we decided to review the process of procurement, and as the amount of security required for the service has grown, we realised we needed to make sure we've done a formal procurement exercise and gain a contract. And with that contract would mean that would secure a contractor to have a long-term arrangement with at least a year. At the moment, the current arrangement is with an organisation that is show to show, event to event. So it would mean they can invest more in their staff and invest more in training and opportunities for them, and secure them long-term employment or longer-term employment. That was question 1. Question 2 was regarding the 5 years.
Yes, that they're currently at 5 years.
Yeah, so
and that the number 6 be marked as 4 in the risk matrix. The provider cannot meet the resource needs of the council. So he was asking, is that the reason?
Having a permanent contract arrangement will mean they could look to employ and gain more people on the books, so they can actually provide a more robust service for us as the council. At the moment, having a shorter term arrangement with us means that they're taking the risk of employing people and not being able to offer gaining the work. So this may having a 1 year contract, I mean they can employ more people and have more permanent staff on there.
Okay, so to summarise, it is a 1 year contract, but it's a slightly different.
It's a 1 year contract with the opportunity to extend afterwards, but we'll give them a formal arrangement to develop their business. And
Just wanted to add to the thing about.
no, sorry.
Just to say about improvement, the point is that as I think events have become more sophisticated. The events may not be more sophisticated, but the organisation of the events has become more sophisticated, and that's where the improvement comes by having a more regularised position where we can work to maximise efficiency, but actually to maximise, as Mr. Stevenson says, training opportunities for staff, for people to get to know the area, the geography of where we're hosting these events. I think the events we've had this summer, which have been fantastic, and some of them have been really large scale. What we need to do is work. This is a very specialist kind of service, and we can improve it. Perhaps is perhaps the wrong way. It's about development as much as it's about improvement. So developing it to make sure that it's exactly the right service that we want, and that the provider is able to develop. I think improvement may not have been the best choice of word on reflection. Yeah. It's about development.
Any further questions? Mr. Mark.
Just to quickly add to that, Chair, that within this contract for the first time we worked very closely with the police, so they actually sat on the procurement panel for this service, and we will work with them in terms of performance management of the contract to make sure that it's meeting the wider needs as well as our own in terms of that provision, and that's where perhaps an improvement does lie from our current provision to future provision.
Brilliant,
thank you. We've got the recommendation at 11.1. Can we agree that? Thank you. And then move on to item 9, development at Ulster Avenue tender award. Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is the latest.
Councillor Moss, can you just
Yeah.
give Councillor Chin part?
This is the latest of our housing developments to come through on stream, as it were. So we're now in a position to award a tender, and we are asked in the recommendation to approve the tender for the provision of these 22 new homes at Ulster Avenue. Details of the tender figures, of course, are in the confidential session, a confidential part of the agenda under item 14, but I think the report is self-explanatory.
Are there any questions or comments? No, obviously, very good news that we get another scheme that we're able to progress with. Fantastic news that we're going ahead with that. The recommendation at 13.1, can we agree that?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Can somebody go and see whether Councillor Chenchi wishes to come back in so she can go out again?
It's a lot quicker when I'm not here.
Okay, so item 11, which is a motion to exclude members of the public so that we can consider commercially confidential information. Can we agree that?
Agreed.
Thank